All right, so we're going to work through these problems right here. First things first, make sure that if you don't have the review that you get one. And so just paying attention to the screen, we have these two equations down here. Remember that the little fraction or the number with the x is our slope. So that tells us how much we're going up or down. And then the other number back here is our y-intercept. So that means on this y somewhere, this is where we're going to put our first line, or our first dot, I mean. So we have a +1, a +1. I'm going to put my dot here for a +1, and then I'm going to go to my slope. My slope says 3's on top, so that's how much I'm going up. And then the bottom number tells me how much I'm going right, even if it's a negative. So we're going to go up 1, 2, 3, because it's a 3 here, and then right 2. So we have our first line, looks something like that. And then our next line, again, we'll look back here, got a +3, so I'll start there. And this one says it's a positive, so I'm going up 1, right 2. So we're going to go where the lines cross. And so my answer is actually this spot right here. So I want to make sure to label that as it always goes X and Y. So I go right 2, so that's a +2, and then up 4, so that's a +4. And that's my answer. One thing to know is when I do graph these, well, these are already graphed, but let's say I already graphed this bottom one. I'd start at a +1 right here. And even though X is alone, I can always put a 1, 1 there. So I'll do 1/1. So that means I go up 1, right 1. And then I draw a line. So just remember, if the lines don't touch, it's a no solution. So make sure to write that on your test when you take it. Next type of problems. Huge on this, make sure that every time you're checking for opposites. So what's an opposite? We have a 4y here. Well, the opposite of a +4 is a -4. So here, if you look at our x's, I have a +2 and a -2. Those work as opposites. So if I have my opposites, then I can just add everything straight down. So 4 plus a -2 would be 2y. That's the same thing as 4 minus 2. Make sure to use your calculator if you don't have it. -2, +2, those will cross out. I don't have to worry about them. Then 4 plus 6 equals 10. Now that I'm at this step, I have to get my y alone. So I'm going to divide by 2. The reason I do that is 2 divided by 2 is just 1, leaving 1y alone. So I'll have y equals 5. At this point, you're not done though, because you have to find out what your x is. We found part of our answer. So our answers are going to be in x, y. So y comes second. We figured out what our 5 is. Y is 5. Now we got to figure out our x. To do that, I'm just going to take this. I'm going to plug it back into one of my equations. It doesn't matter which one. I usually pick the easier looking one with all positive numbers. So I'm going to rewrite that equation. But instead of a y, I'll put a parenthesis here for now. I'm going to replace it with what we said y equals. So I'm going to put 4 blank plus 2x equals 4. Then I'm just going to plug in what we said x equals. In this case, it's going to be 5. Next, I'll solve. First step, before I can do anything, I should multiply. I got 4 times 5 is 20. And I bring everything down, plus 2x equals 4. Now that I'm at this point, I have to make sure that I get rid of my plus or minus number. So what I mean by that is I have this x here. Eventually, I'm going to want to divide by 2, but first I got to get rid of this plus or minus number. It's a +20, so I minus 20 from both sides. And when I say both sides, I mean both sides of the equal sign. Remember, this would be the other side. 4 minus 20 would be a -16. Use your calculators if you're not sure. And then 2 plus 2 is going to be, then I got to bring down my 2x. Just bringing that 2x straight down. Next, I would divide by 2 to get x alone, and negative 16 divided by 2 is a negative 8. So now I figured out what x is. I can plug that in. My answer is negative 8, 5. I'm not going to work through this entire one because it's the same thing, but remember I want to get opposites. No, actually, I'm going to work through this one because we don't have opposites yet. So that's the first thing to look. I don't have any opposites, but I can easily make opposites. I can look at my x's and I can look at my y's and I can make opposites. I'll work with my x's. So I'm going to look at my bigger number on the x's. My bigger number is this 6 right here. I know that the opposite of a positive 6 is a negative 6. So what I want to do is I want to turn this 2x right here, this 2, into a negative 6. So I got to find out what times 2 equals a negative 6. Well, I know 2 times 3 equals 6, but 2 times 3 is a positive 6, so I want to just add a negative sign there. So I'm going to multiply 2 times this negative 3. And I'm going to get my negative 6x, just like I wanted. So now I have my opposites. But what I do to one, I have to do to all of them. So I'll multiply this 3 by a negative 3, and I'll get a negative 9y. And I'll do the same thing to that last one. And I'll get a negative 21. So what I did is I made opposites for this top equation, and this equation now have opposites. I can just add them. So let me bring it to the side here so it's easier to see. I'm going to just bring in this one straight over. 6x minus y equals 11. And my new equation that I made, my opposite for, this one down here, I got a negative 6x now minus 9y equals a negative 21. Now I have my opposites, my negative 6 and positive 6. I can just add them together now. Remember, I'm going to add straight down. These are going to cross out. Negative 6 plus 6 is 0. This is the same thing as a negative 1y. So I have a negative 1 plus a negative 9 is a negative 10y. And then over here, I have 11 plus a negative 21, which is, if you plug it in your calculator, you do the math, it's a negative 10. So then I want to get y alone. So I'm going to divide by a negative 10. Make sure you bring this negative sign with you. So I'm going to do that on both sides. And y will equal negative divided by a negative is a positive, and any number divided by itself is just 1. So y equals 1. So now I know what y equals. Remember, that's part of my answer. So part of my answer is 1. The other part, I have to figure it out. So I can use either equation that I started off with over here. I'd pick whichever one looks easier to me. I like the bottom one, this 2x plus 3y equals 7, because it's all positive. So I'm going to rewrite this equation. 2x plus, and remember, I'm not going to put my y in there because I solved for y. So I know what y equals. So I'm going to leave this y blank. It's supposed to be a parenthesis. I'm going to leave this y blank equals 7. Then I'm going to plug in my 1 because that's what y equals. And then I'll do the math. First, I got to multiply. 3 times 1 is 3. And then I'll bring everything down. 2x plus 3 equals 7. Remember, before I can divide this 2 by everything, I got to get rid of that 3 hanging out there. So it's a positive 3. I'll subtract 3 from both sides. Subtract 3. And what I'm left with is, I'm bringing down my 2x equals 7 minus 3 is 4. Last step, I'm going to divide by 2. So I'll divide by 2 on both sides. And x equals a positive 2. So I'll go plug that in for my answer. 2, 1 is my answer. These ones are the trickiest ones on here. So I cannot just look at one of these numbers. Let's say I'm looking at my x's. I have a 7, a -7. Well, I can't turn the opposite of a -7 is a +7. I can't just multiply 2 by anything to get a +7. And the same goes for 6 and 8. So in this case, I have to change both of those numbers. And so I pick a number that both of them can go into by taking 7 times 2. Well, I know 7 times 2 is 14. So I can change both of those into a 14 to make my opposites. I choose a 14x, and then I got to make one negative, so I have opposites. So I'm going to choose a negative 14x. So then I'll just ask myself, I got to multiply these by something to make that happen. The top one, 2 times what equals 14? 2 times 7 equals 14. So I'm going to do that there. 7 times 2 is my 14x, and then I got to do it to these other three. So 7 times a -6 would be a -42, and -42y, and then again 7 times a -6 would be a -42. Now I go to the bottom one. I got to do the same thing. I already have a -14x here, and I have a -7. So -7 times what equals -14? That would just be a +2. So I'm just going to do that for both of them. Multiply everything by 2. So 2 times the -7 is a -14, 2 times 8 is a 16, and 2 times -5 is a -10. So that's where you get this comes in. Everything I said, I multiplied everything, got those. Now I have my opposites. I have my 14, -14. I am just going to add everything. These will cross out. I'll take -42 plus 16, which is a -26, and I'll take a -42 plus a negative. Remember, that makes a bigger negative, and I get a -52. I'm going to divide by a -26 on both sides, and that's going to leave me with y equals 2. So I know what my y is. I'll just plug it back in. Plug it back into either equation, either one of these top two to figure out what x is. I plugged it into this top one here. So I got rid of that y and I plugged in the 2. I solve it. 6 times 2 is 12. That's where this 12 is. -6 times 2 is a -12. Then I'll add 12 to both sides. -6 plus 12 is going to be a +6. I'll bring my 2x down. Last step is I'll divide by 2, and 6 divided by 2 is 3. So now I know that x equals 3. So I know x is 3, y is 2. That's my answer. This is supposed to be a parenthesis. All right, now the next type. So these ones, it's the substitution method. I'm going to plug in what I know y equals. So y equals 3x minus 2. It's a little confusing because it's not like just one number, but we're going to plug this in. And the reason we do it is if I plug this in for my letter y here, I'm going to get rid of one of my letters. So I'm no longer going to be dealing with y. So I'm going to replace 2x plus y with, I'm going to replace that y with 3x minus 2. So now my new equation says 2x plus 3x minus 2 equals 8. I don't actually need these parentheses in here. They help at first, but now that I'm not going to use them, I can remove them. And then I can just solve the equation. I got to combine what I can on one side of the equation. So I can add 3 plus 2. They're both positive, so I'll get a 5x minus 2 equals 8. Then I'll get rid of, I'm going to divide by 5 eventually, but first I got to get rid of this minus 2 by adding 2, and what I'm left with is 8 plus 2 is 10. I'll bring down my 5x. Remember, I want to get x alone, so I'm going to divide by 5. So I'll divide both sides by 5, and 10 divided by 5 is 2. Now at this point, you'll have to take this, plug it back into this equation up here. I'm not going to show all the work, but I know that if this was a 2 right here and I'm multiplying, I'd take 3 times 2 is 6, and 6 minus 2 is 4. So that tells me what my y is. So my answer should be 2, 4. Then coming down here, very similar problem. I know what my y equals, and then here's a y here. So I'm going to plug this in for this y. Leave me with 2x plus 5 equals 3x minus 1. Once I get to this spot, I have them equal each other. The problem is I can't have x's on both sides of the equation. So I got to get rid of one. I always choose to get rid of the smaller one. 2x is smaller, so I'm going to minus 2x from both sides to get rid of it. So I'll minus 2x on this side of the equation. And what I'm left with is 3 minus 2 is just x, or 1x if you want. And then I got to bring everything down. So I'm going to bring down that minus 1 and that 5. To get x alone, I'll add 1 on both sides. Add 1. And when I do that, I'll know that x equals 6. You're almost done. You just got to plug this 6 into one of the equations up here. This is usually the easiest one. Since I'm solving for x, I'll plug in my x here. I'd have 6 times 2 is 12, plus 5 is 17. One other thing that we got to talk about is, I'm going to rush through this pretty quick. I'm going to take my y, what y equals a negative 2x minus 3. I'll plug it in for this y. Then I have this equation. Once I plug that in, it says 3 times y. So I got to take 3 times both of these. 3 times the negative 2 and 3 times the negative 3. That will give me a negative 6 minus 9. And then I'll bring everything else down. And here's where I got to explain. So now I'm going to combine what I can. I have a negative 6 and a positive 6x. So I can combine those two. Negative 6 plus 6, they're just going to cancel out. And that leaves me with negative 9 equals 6. So that doesn't make any sense. And when they don't make any sense like that, and we don't have any letters left, that is just going to be a no solution. If I ever have something like 5 equals 5 or 0 equals 0, that would be an example of infinite solution. All right, last thing, the story problems. We'll go through these as quick as I can. I'm just going to set up the story problem, and I'll expect you to answer it based off what we showed. So first thing is define variables. We want to talk about what find out what we're trying to solve and set up the equation. So we have tickets that we're selling. We have raffle tickets and basketball tickets. You are selling a total of 25 tickets for $105. So you sell 25 tickets, you make $105. Each raffle ticket costs $3, and the basketball game costs $5. How many raffle and basketball tickets do you sell all together? So I'm just going to show you how to set it up. On these type of problems, I want to label them. So we'll call our raffle tickets R, and we'll call our basketball tickets B. The first equation that I'm going to do is I'm going to add up my raffle tickets plus my basketball tickets. And that's going to equal my total amount of tickets I sold. So I sold a total of 25 tickets. I don't want to mess with this money one yet. I'll do that in the next equation, where I do all money. All the money will go together in the next equation. So R plus B equals 25. So my raffle tickets plus my basketball tickets, and I sold a total of 25 of them. The next one will deal with money. So we're still dealing with raffle tickets and basketball tickets, but now we're going to add a cost to it. So each raffle ticket, it says each raffle ticket cost me $3. So I'm going to put 3R. The reason I do that is for every raffle ticket I buy, it's going to cost me $3. So let's say I bought 1 raffle ticket. I'd put 1 times 3. If I bought 4 raffle tickets, I put a 4 here, and 4 times 3 would be 12. So this represents the number of raffle tickets I'm buying. We'll do the same thing for basketball games. It says each one costs 5. And then I spent a total of 105, or made a total of $105. So now that you got this part, the next step is, before we can add them, remember, oops, that's supposed to be a plus sign. I have to make my opposites. So my opposite of, it doesn't matter which letter I choose. I like to go for the smaller one if I can. The opposite of a positive 3 would be a negative 3. So if I multiply this and think of this as a 1R, If I took that 1 and I multiplied it by a -3, I would have a -3r. So I'm going to do that to all three of them. -3 times r is a -3r. -3 times b would be a -3b. And a -3 times 25 would be a -75. Now I got my opposites. I can just add everything straight down and then you would solve. Here, when we're comparing two items, this one's new. But when we're comparing two items, basically all we're going to do is we're going to set them equal to each other. I know that one electrician charges $16 plus $12 an hour. The other one charges $10 plus 15 an hour. So I'm going to set them equal to each other because I want to find out the amount that they will cost the same. So if they're the same, they have to be equal to each other. So I'm going to make that into an equation. The first one says 16 plus $12 an hour. So we're going to start off with 16. So no matter how long they work, they're going to charge us $16. Then it's going to be $12 per hour. However you write that, you're going to put 12 and then you'll just put an X here because that represents the number of hours. So if I worked 1 hour, it'd be 1 times 12 plus 16. Then we're going to do the other equation, set it up the same way. You're going to have to pay your $10 regardless. So I'll put a 10 here. The thing that is changing though is I'm going to add 15 for every 1 hour I work. So I'll do that as 15x. Then you just solve it. Just like we did that other equation up top. I can't have x's on both sides, so I'm going to choose to get rid of the smaller x, which is the 12. So I'll minus 12x from both sides. And what I'm left with is 3x. I'm going to bring everything down. It's a positive 3x, so I'll put a plus sign here. I'll bring down my 10 and my 16. Then I can't have this 10 here, just because I want 3x to be alone. So I'll minus 10 on both sides. So if I minus 10, this will go away. I'll take 16 minus 10 is 6 equals 3x. And finally, I'll divide by 3 and x will equal 2. So now that I know what that is, that means in 2 hours worth of time, both of these will cost exactly the same. It wants to know what is the cost. So I'll just plug this 2 in for one of those equations, or 1/2 of it. So let's say I plug in a 2 here instead of this x. I would have 16 plus 12 times 2. So I'll just do that, 16 plus 12. And instead of an x, I'm going to put a 2 there. Because we said it's 2. 2 is our new x. So 12 times 2 is 24. Then I just have to add 16 to it. And 16 plus 24 is 40. So it would have costed you $40 after 2 hours of work. So and that's what they want to know. What's the cost? Last one to do. We're going to go through this one quick. Very quick. So this one, they pretty much have the equation set up for you. It says group A bought 5 pizzas and 3 drinks for $17. So that equation is going to look like 5 pizzas plus 3 drinks, D is for drinks, equals $17. The second equation set up for you too. Group B bought 4 pizzas and 5 drinks, the 5 drinks for $17.50. So I got my equations. The next thing I'd have to do is come up with opposites because I don't have any opposites, so I can't add them. So I could turn 5 and 4. I know that 5 times 4 is 20, so those would make good opposites. If I did a positive 20 and a negative 20. Doesn't matter which one's negative, I just did the top one negative. So next I'd figure out what times 5 equals a negative 20. Well, I know 5 times 4 is 20, but I need a negative 20, so I'll add a negative up front. So I'll do that to all 3 of them. I'll multiply by -4. You'll do the same thing on the bottom. 4 times what equals 20? I know 5 is. So you'll multiply by 5 by all of them. And then you'll end up with this. You can pause it if you need. Then you're just going to work through the steps. I'm not going to go through it all, but we'd add everything. We'd end up with 13. 13, what are we dealing with again? For 13 drinks, because we take negative 12 plus 25, 13 drinks equals 1950. So I divide by 13 on both sides and I get $1.50. So each drink's $1.50. I'll plug in that $1.50 into the equation to figure out what pizza costs. So I do that, I multiply, do my steps. 3 times $1.50 is $4.50. Just in case you're not sure, I use this top equation and I change D for $1.50. So I solve it just like I normally would. I divide, I find out that popcorn is $2.50, not popcorn, pizza. I keep making this mistake. This should be pizza. Pizza is $2.50, but my original question said, how much would 2 pieces of pizza cost and 3 drinks? Well, I know pizza costs $2.50. So if I bought 2 slices, $2.50 times 2 would be $5. And then it says, and 3 drinks. So my $5 plus my 3 drinks, each one costs $1.50. So I'll take that times 3 and I'll get $4.50. So the total I'm spending is going to be $9.50. If you have any questions, ask them. And get ready for the test.